or disabled family member. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that economic value of the unpaid family caregiver at more than $234 billion. Caregivers selflessly sacrifice their time, their financial resources, their lifestyle to care for a loved one. However, this sacrifice is not without its own cost, often to the health and the well-being of the caregiver. Today, we're pleased to have an expert from the academic and medical community to share her insight on achieving a balance. Can you take care of yourself and them too? Dr. Mary Austrom is the Wesley P. Martin Professor of Alzheimer Disease Education in the Department of Psychiatry at the Indiana University School of Medicine and the Director of the Education Core at the Indiana Alzheimer Disease Center. She is an expert in aging and Alzheimer's disease. She delivers workshops for families and medical staff and offers helpful strategies for family caregivers in her blog, Caring and Coping with Dr. Mary. She has published more than 125 articles, books, chapters, and abstracts on her work and regularly speaks to groups nationally and internationally. I imagine she has an enormous business card too. How do you get all of that on a little business card, all of that? Please help me welcome Mary Austrom.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Julia, for that nice introduction. And it is indeed a very large business card, but thank goodness it's mostly digital on my signature these days. Anyway, I'm, again, pleased to be here. I have been in Indiana almost 29 years now, and I believe CICOA was one of the first community service agencies I met with as I joined the faculty at IU, and that was a long time ago, people. But what Julia didn't tell you was that I was 12 when I came to Indiana. Anyway, so I'm happy to be here. I'm going to speak a little bit today on this idea of achieving a balance between can you care for your loved one and take care of yourself and survive that journey? Because you've heard the statistics, and indeed it is stressful. Caring for a loved one, particularly with disability or in my area with a dementing disorder, is especially stressful. And we know from just tons of research over the past 30 years that caregivers suffer enormous health consequences, both physical health and emotional health. And indeed, recent data suggests that just being a caregiver, just being a caregiver increases the probability of that caregiver getting dementia themselves. So that's a high burden for any individual to take on. Now, in terms of mental and emotional health and well-being, depression is by far the biggest risk factor. Most people caring for a loved one will suffer a depressive episode. So it is indeed a toll, besides the financial burden as well. Okay, they keep putting me on and not my slides. Why are they doing that? Anyway, so common sources of caregiver stress. What is it that's so hard for our families to deal with? And I have a laundry list of these, but most common is simply lack of information, not knowing what to do, when to do it, where to go for help, and where do I start, particularly following a difficult diagnosis. Okay, and initially, uncertainty about the future. If I had a nickel every time a family asked me that question, what will happen to my fill in the blank if something happens to me? I'd have a lot of nickels by now, people. This is one of the scariest issues for family members, that something would happen to them first. And you know what? It often does. Many times, our caregivers become hospitalized or they die before the patient they're caring for. So that's a horrible situation, and it happens more times than I care to, really admit. So again, and we need CICOA out there intervening long before that happens. Certainly, the denial of the diagnosis gets in the way of appropriate planning, very stressful. Talked a little bit about depression, horrible, financial issues, enough said. They worry so much about long-term care or buying additional services just to manage. So you can also imagine the burden on the family worrying about that. Multiple caregiving demands is more common than you might think. And I've worked with our CICOA population. Many of them come through Eskenazi Health, and I cannot describe how stressful their environment is, generally speaking. So I have a family who's not only about a 50-year-old woman caring for her husband, who's a little bit older, diagnosed with dementia, simultaneously her mother, who's like 82, diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and her father has terminal prostate cancer. So she's moved everybody in with her. Now that's not, I hate to say it, atypical. Can you imagine? And she had a high school age son ready to go off to college. This is what she does all day long, and I think she's a hairstylist and does that in her home to make a little bit of money. I mean, it's a zoo, and she's trying to manage that on her own. Anyway, so because I believe, I put that up there because I believe if caregivers had only their one patient to care for and no other demands, they would do a wonderful job. Unfortunately, you know, the rest of life gets in the way. And then there's something, you know, that I call family conflicts, and some of you may have heard me speak before, but I can spend 3 days on family conflicts. And after 25 years in the field, I just want you to go home with this message, people. There is no such thing as a functional family. Doesn't exist. Basically, I don't know who made that up, probably sold a lot of books about the functional family. We are all dysfunctional. If we start there, we have a much better chance of coping. So here's my other. Set your expectations really low, and you're never disappointed. Okay, other very stressful things for my families, decision making, you know, housing. What am I going to do with mom now? Do I move her in with me? Can my sister take her? Will my brother take her? She always loved him best anyway, right? Very stressful. Healthcare decisions. Can you imagine making someone's healthcare decisions? Especially the clients I work with are cognitive disability. Is, you know, you didn't expect that. My father was quite capable of making all of his decisions until the last 5 or 6 years of his life. Then we had to look at nursing home, we had to look at healthcare options, and we had to look at end-of-life issues. It's really tough to reverse those roles and make, you know, end-of-life decisions for my dad that really had taken such good care of me for all those years. So those are very stressful turn of cognitive events for the caregivers. And then just managing ADLs or activities of daily living, just managing someone's care day in and day out for what oftentimes can be decades really, really takes a toll on caregivers. But what's interesting in our research is, as stressful as all that is, as common as depression is among caregivers, and I said upwards of 50% get depressed, that means there's 50% that aren't depressed. So I want to know, what are they doing right? What can we learn from my good copers that we could share with people in need of help? And these are some of the things we've gleaned both from the not only from the dementia literature, but also cancer caregivers and children with disabilities literature. Because those families, children with disabilities and special needs, are often caregivers for 60, 70 years. I mean, they're even more stressed than my dementia families. But these are some of the things that we've noted make better copers. And it's those that engage in less denial, so they don't spend their time coming to all the medical offices in the city looking for a 5th and 6th diagnosis. They're the ones that say, you know, it is what it is. They don't say, why me, why me? They say, well, why not me? It's my turn. This is what I've got to do. And that sense of acceptance helps them to move on from that denial phase and get busy. They're the ones that seek information and education. They're the ones that come to all the events we do at IU. They're the ones that find the support groups. They're the ones that find CICOA's information and referral line and get busy. I always worry about the thousands out there that don't find us. Those are the ones that we need to do more to reach. My good copers are more realistic about what they can and can't do. And related to that is because they know they can't do something, they'll speak up and ask for help. Okay, so they're the ones that aren't afraid to say, I need to call in a professional, or I need to get mom more help, or I should go to a support group. They break down tasks and take it one day at a time, which is a wonderful skill and something that we have success at teaching caregivers to do. Don't look at the whole thing, but let's see how we can get through today. And if today is too big, let's just get through breakfast. Take a deep breath, and then we'll figure out how to get through lunch and then dinner. But where I find they get stuck is it's overwhelming to think of the enormity of it all. So we try to break it down for them. Good copers can do that. And of course, looking for meaning in their role is wonderful. And we know that in general. If you can find meaning in your task, if you can say, and many of them do, our older ones say, this is God's will for me right now. I must do this. My dad took care of me, it's my turn. Or I find satisfaction in what I'm doing. I'm a good caregiver. I love my mother. They tend to do much better. And if I had a pill to give everyone a positive attitude, I'd be a millionaire by now. But anyway, so these are good coping skills. These are things that we can teach caregivers. And I know we all have, and CICOA does offer caregiver education and even does trainings and offers things in corporations. So we can't do all this caregiving alone. So this is how CICOA steps up and helps us. So as I was saying, they certainly do a lot of care planning for our clients' needs and future needs. That handles a lot of that fear that families come to me with. What will happen if something happens to me? CICOA helps them plan for the future. This is what the care plan should look like. Certainly Meals and More, offering not only nutritious meals and coming into the homes, also reduces caregiver concerns that mom isn't alone all day. You know, I have to work, at least someone is popping in. Not only is she getting fed, but somebody's checking in on her. That's a huge relief. And of course, their ADRC, their Aging and Disability Center, is the #1 place for all of us to call first, just to get the appropriate information and access to all sorts of services. So if nothing else, if you take that CICOA pamphlet with the phone number and give it to everyone you know, that's a huge help for caregivers. And then caregiver workshops, certainly for corporations and other groups, and I heard a Rotary is represented. They're wonderful to come out and do education and that sort of thing. So I really believe supporting CICOA makes good sense, not only for our community, as the mayor said. I think it's incredible that we have this resource in our community, but I also think it's it's one way to help ourselves as we prepare for our future, because I hate to break it to you, but we're all aging people. You know, I used to think this was job security, working in the elderly, with the elderly. Oh, it's going to be old people forever. I'll never be out of a job. Well, now it's becoming personal, people. How I've been down to Orient Shop and done staff training, have I not? My goal is to teach them how to take care of me when they find Dr. Mary as their next pre-screening assessment. So I have taken this on personally, that they will provide the best care for me and my colleagues and family. But anyway, so besides supporting CICOA, and I hope you do that generously today, everyone. They are not paying me to say that either. But besides supporting CICOA, what else can we do to prepare ourselves for our own care in old age? I don't think there's a magic bullet, but I'll tell you what we did. So I believe if you have lots of children, and especially daughters, you're gonna be okay. And so I just as an aside, I do want to acknowledge, you laugh, but true story, and my husband is in the audience. Maybe some of you know Dr. Mary's husband. Anyway, Doug is here with me today. This is a true story. We had 3 boys, and they're up in the top corner with my father before he died. And we had no daughters, and I thought, oh my God, what am I gonna do? I've worked with a lot of daughters-in-law, and this is not good. I know where that story ends. So, never daunted, we went and adopted 2 caregivers. So here's my last pearl of wisdom, people, especially you young women in the audience. Don't put all your old age eggs in but one baby basket. Make sure you spread that around. And I've told the older boys, I said, you know, if you just take care of mom and dad 1 year at a time, it's 5 years before your next turn comes up. So think of it. Anyway, thank you so much for having me. And really, thank you for supporting CICOA, and I hope everyone is extremely generous today, because I think after me, they're going to hit you up. So thank you all.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for your service in Central Indiana over all of the years. I'm going to go home right after this and call my brothers and sisters and say, I was right. We are dysfunctional. Dr. Mary says so. Right? Okay. Well, next